Well, hello, everyone.
Hey,
Welcome to today's episode. All right, we are live.
all right.
Fantastic. Welcome, everyone. We've got a great show for you today. As we promised, we are intertwining some interviews into our live streams to kind of give you a little bit more variety, a little bit different perspectives of the same from a different type of view. This week we have Nat Couropmitree and Nat Hats. He helps creators with big hearts and bold ideas. That's why I love that, bold ideas. And to take up space and be wildly open to receive so that they can create their greatest impact on the world without burning out. And that's what we've been talking about for the last 2 years. Nat, welcome. We're so glad to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, it's really a joy, Ross. Thank you for inviting me. Gary, it's nice to meet you as well. I've heard great things.
Absolutely
Yeah,
great.
Nat and I have been friends for,
It's a long time.
14 years. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just absolutely phenomenal. So as usual, Nat, what we tell everybody is put down in the comments section where you're from. Give us an emoji. Let us know you're there. And we're going to put that same thing on you, except you're just going to tell us. So where are you from, Nat? Where are you?
Currently, I live in the Boston area.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have been there for a long time. So you are a personal coach, a business coach. Tell us about your career a little bit.
Yeah. My business, my career, probably similar to a lot of people, have gone through a lot of transitions, a lot of evolution, and currently I work more as a personal spiritual coach with business owners. And so I don't work so much about like the nuts and bolts of business, but I help people look at their learned behaviors in terms of, what have they learned? What are the ways they've learned to cope with life, especially as a kid, and how that continues to dominate the way that they see how life works, as a business person.
So especially as a kid, can you go a little bit deeper on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we come into this world, and we often, we're bright, we're curious, we're just like free. We're just expressing our truth as kids, and then we experience things like human love. What I call about human love is human love tends to be very conditional. It tends to be manipulative. It's not with the wrong intention, but it's like, and so an example would be like, if a parent told you had to behave, you had to be a good kid, and then you could get something. And so from a kid's perspective, that means, okay, if I behave, then mom or dad will love me. If I misbehave, then they don't love me. And then it gets complicated because maybe you did something and they were happy, and then the second time you did it again, and then they weren't happy. And then from a kid's perspective, it's like, oh, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't perfect enough. And so now you start to develop this sense of perfectionism of like, oh, I need to be more perfect, I need to be more flawless, because I must not have done it well enough for my parents to respond in a favorable way, right? And then also you start to develop this idea that you're responsible for how other people feel, and you take responsibility for their feelings, their emotions, and so suddenly you start to build this whole program, this operating system in a way of like how life works. And so you start to live as a perfectionism and think that, oh, if I get it right, then I can receive what I want. But the thing that people deal with is they they think it's about getting it right, but what they're really dealing with is the discomfort, the visceral discomfort in their bodies, and they haven't learned how to be with that discomfort in a healthy way. And so they do what they've continued to do over the years, right? They continue to try to make a change externally in order to feel better, trying to, let's say, please someone in order to feel better. And one of the things that they really need to address is, how can I be with the discomfort? How can I be at peace even though I feel the discomfort? And then I can take the actions that are in alignment with what is true for me, rather than taking actions from a place of lack or fear or avoidance. That's one example of
Right.
perfectionist. In my model, I have four other archetypes that people tend to live from.
Hmm. And all these are drawn from experiences or learnings that they've gotten as children.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if I go through, maybe if I name the other four, and there are five altogether, and then I'll talk a little bit more about that. So, besides the perfectionist, we have the overgiver, we have the prover earner, we have the no needer, and we have the sacrificer.
Hmm.
And these are ways that we've learned to cope with life from the brilliant kids that we were, right? So it's not like if you self-identify as one of these, or actually all five, even like I identify with all five, right? Welcome to the all five club. Uh, um, but it's important to recognize that these are habits or behaviors that you learn, either you learned or you adopted in order to feel safe, in order to feel safe, loved and valued, in order to get your needs met, right? So they're not bad. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you wrong to engage in these behaviors. It's just having the awareness of it helps us then detach from the story of this is who I am, to this is something I experienced, and then you can start making changes, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I come from this very spiritual perspective, and um, recognize that we each of us are already whole. Each of us are already divine spirit, and so we're here as divinity to have an experience, and whatever that experience is okay. There's not a right or wrong. It's
Right.
just a matter of choosing, okay, now that I'm aware that I've been operating this way and I realize it's not serving me, because maybe I haven't actually ever really received what I want. I only thought I did, or I feel miserable operating this way. I'm suddenly becoming aware that this is not working for me. How else do I want to show up? And this is the invitation in my model and in the way I coach.
Hmm. So when someone is a child, what's an example of something that would put them into this frame of mind as a child? And does
Hmm.
and on the second part of that is this generally coming from the parents, or is it coming from, external sources
It
outside
comes,
the family?
well, conditioning can come from anywhere, right?
Okay.
So it can come from culture, family,
Mhm.
society, school. It could also be with the limited knowledge that a child has. It could be their interpretation, and then it becomes their go-to explanation for why life is this way. right? So so an example would be, so one of the archetypes is the no-needer, and the no-needer is someone that feels like they have to be strong. They can't show weakness. They have to make it seem like they have things together. They're usually the responsible ones. They believe that being emotional is a weakness and it is a vulnerability, and they really try to protect against coming across as vulnerable or having needs, right?
Mhm.
And so a child that usually falls into like a no-needer might be an experience where first of all, they may be sensitive, empathic, so they already feel into the needs of other people, right? And so they know that, like, oh, if I ask for what I want, I can already feel what this other person's reaction is. They feel stressed, burdened, overwhelmed. And suddenly this child says, oh, I can't ask for what I want. I can't have needs because I cause stress on
Mhm.
other people, right?
Um,
And
mhm.
so they start to hold back on their needs and they start to take care of other people, not knowing that, well, thinking that that's a value, and they may get lauded, they might get praised for that help. And they start to identify and define their value based on how much they can give to others and how little needs they have, right?
Yeah.
Another example of that might be where if the child had to grow up early, meaning maybe their parents just had too much on their hands, they couldn't handle things. Maybe another child had more needs, and so that one child that's like perceptive is saying, okay, mom and dad already have too much on their hands. I don't want to add to that. And so
Mhm.
I'm going to pick up the slack. And again, I'm going to be praised for how I pick up the slack. And then suddenly it feels uncomfortable to even have needs, right? To
Mhm.
even know what your own needs are because you're so in tune with what everyone else needs. And suddenly you become second and everyone else would not even, you're not even second, you're last on the list,
Yeah.
right? Because
Right.
everyone's needs keeps on being front and
Superseding yours.
center.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's one example. I mean, another might be like the sacrificer. The sacrificer is someone who might have been told that they're too much to handle, asking too many questions, uh, too sensitive, even whatever the too much is. And then you learn that, oh, I'm too much for people. And so you start to dim your light. You start to turn down the volume on who you are. Or maybe what makes you unique doesn't fit into the framework that's asked of you, right? Like there's a pre-existing structure of how you should be in the world. And
Yeah.
because you don't fit into that, you learn to just quiet down the parts that don't fit, right? And so people that operate at a sacrificer tend to be not good with boundaries. They're not good at setting boundaries. They're not good at sticking to boundaries. They also tend to it in terms of watering themselves down, but they also water down what they want. So as an entrepreneur, they may create a program, think that, oh, no one wants this at the level that I'm
Mhm.
creating it, and so they start to water it down to the place where they think it can be received by other people, and
Mhm.
but it's not really what you want. And so you get mixed results. You might get people on board, but you're not really excited about what you're doing because it's not to the level that you want. But you don't think you can have it because you're so used to just watering yourself down, dimming your light. Um, another so I don't know, I'll stop there for a moment and then
Okay. Jerry, you
see.
seen that?
Yeah. So someone is spamming. So if you guys are noticing that, just ignore or tag that. Someone's been spamming some messages on our message there. So if you all notice that, if you can just kind of tag it as a spam for us to let us know, because I don't know how that person got on, but
No, have you
I'll
touched
jump
on
on the
that?
page and try to sort it out, Ross.
What's that?
I'll jump on the page and try to sort it out.
Okay.
Hey, so I wanted to, Nat, so then there's a couple things that I have to ask here is, one, so then as a parent, what's the solution? Because it's kind of, the tricky part is, I mean, you want to acknowledge your kids when they're doing certain things, certain times to help out. And I can see where there are certain strengths with each of these and also certain weaknesses with each of these categories. How do we nip it at the butt, if you will, so that it doesn't, to create more well-rounded, because like I said, I think there's value in having, being part of the five club, and having certain times when to use them and other times when not. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, how would someone, like, do you have any way of, I'm wondering if you have a method for someone to kind of do like a test to kind of see where they fit in the scale of each of these?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, people can go to my website, boldaliveness.com/quiz. Okay. And there's a quiz that people can take. When you take the quiz, I highly recommend that you think about like a specific theme. So for instance, like, who am I being in business? Because who am I being in business it may be different than who am I being in a relationship.
Sure, of course,
right?
Yeah.
And so when you take the quiz and if you submit your email address, it will give you a rank of the five of by percentage based on how you answered. But what I find is people say, well, in business, I'm a no-needer, but in a relationship, I'm more of an overgiver. And so it's important to kind of go in with that mindset of, okay, from where am I asking this question? So to answer your question about what can parents do, I mean, parents do as best as they can, right? And ultimately, it's important to remind your kids that you love them regardless of their behavior. That you that their behavior, even if you as a parent get upset, it's to be in your emotion and then later go back and say, yes, I was upset and I still love you. That, me being upset does not mean that I think less of you, or that, I want you to change your behavior because of this. No, it's, I still adore you. I still love you. I still value you. And yes, I got upset. So it's important to be clear about that. Remind them how much you value them. Remind them that yes, they might have misbehaved, but they're still valued as individuals, as kids. I think that's really important to let your kids know that you value them, that they have value independent of their behavior. And behavior is something that you can you change, right? Like that, sometimes you don't know. And so that's one thing. On the other side,
as adults, then are we then is a thing then to just kind of get to that understanding that, hey, the connection that I was looking for I didn't get, but doesn't mean that it wasn't there, because I associated it to this instead of what was actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first steps in starting to change this in your life is first, as I said before, is to recognize these are experiences and behaviors that you have. They don't define you. It's not your identity. It's just,
and they're context specific, right? So they're
correct.
They change and shift based on context. Got it.
The context. It's content. It's always shifting, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first level. The second would then to kind of in tandem with that is recognize that you're a spiritual being, your divinity, and that at any moment you can start to choose differently, like choose a different behavior, choose a different experience, and that kind of recognition gives you freedom to know, like, oh, I can actually be different. I'm not I'm not locked into this, nor do I actually even have to change it. I'm not changing who I am. Who I am is just eternal. What I'm changing is how I'm expressing my divinity. And another piece about this, which ties back to what I said about what parents can do with kids, is from this place of divinity, you can embrace your humanity. You don't need to make what you did wrong or how you're behaving now wrong. You can see it as, this is something I've learned, and it's not me. And so when you embrace it instead of make it wrong, it makes it easier to move through it. But when you judge it as wrong, then it gives it this heaviness, and that judgment becomes resistance, and that's just, it's a hard thing to move, right? Yeah. So then the next piece is, in my model, I have what I call frequencies of opening. These are different qualities, or I'll name them in a little bit, that help us open up more to our divinity. Because when we're operating as these, I'm playing with the names, but I'm using survival archetypes for now. When we're living as these survival archetypes, we're actually living in a very rigid, contracted state of being. It's very tiring and exhausting to live this way, and that's the big reason why you mentioned in my bio about burnout. It's like, when we live from a place of where our value, when we trade our value for what we want, and we think that our value is not enough, then it creates this virtual perpetual cycle of not enough. I'm giving, I'm doing so much, but I never let myself receive. It's so exhausting. And I say that from experience. So, I created this model for me, actually. And I needed to see it for myself in order to be able to teach it, right? And share it. So then going back to these frequencies of opening, they are wonder, abundance, ease, connection, and power. These are inherent in who we are. It's not something that we have to gain. It's not something that, and when I say they're inherent, they're actually, it's what we already are, but we've learned to suppress them, right? Because of what we've been taught to believe, right? I mean, again, if you go back to a kid has so much wonder, right? So much curiosity and playfulness. Right. They're in a state of abundance because they're just experiencing life. They don't know lack until they're taught lack, right? They have a sense of ease naturally. They're bumbling around. I mean, I have like a 2-year-old grandson, so I see this, like they're just going around, they're just exploring, they're just doing whatever. This sense of ease. There's no tension in them until they start to learn tension from their parents, or as they get older, they start to have a sense of I versus all, right?
Yeah.
Connection. Connection is about knowing that we're never separate, we're never alone. We're part of the whole, right? Nice. And then power is we have power, right? Or we are power. And power can come in an expression of anger or frustration, but it's not a bad thing. It's just what it is, right? And then we as a society or a family culture have learned, oh, no, you can't have anger.
Put the
anger
rules on it, for sure. Yeah.
Right. You start to put rules on it, and then you're like, oh, okay. And you start to play within those rules. Yeah. So from these frequencies of opening, I invite people to tap into the feeling of it. Like, we have a sense of it. So for example, if you were to imagine yourself as wonder. Wonder is about curiosity, playfulness, sense of awe, right? You can, just talking about it now, you can feel it, right? You can like just become it. And then now that you're wonder, how might you live life from wonder?
Nice.
And then you start to get ideas, right? Things emerge in your awareness of, oh yes, this is how I can live from wonder. And it bypasses the mind, which is beautiful, because the mind is the one that's trying to keep you safe as a survival archetype. So you can't live from the mind in this way. This is an invitation to surrender to your, to this presence that you are, and allow it to guide you, right? If you were abundance, which you are, tap into, what does abundance feel like, right? What is a sense of being generous to myself feel like? And how might I act differently knowing that I'm living from abundance rather than trying to get abundance?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and you can go through each one of these and feel into it. And especially, and so one thing you can do just as a starting point is, if you take the quiz and okay, here's how here are the survival archetypes that I show up as most. And let's say you show up most in business as an overgiver, then a starting point is to look at abundance, because abundance is on the other side of overgiver. This is how it was created. And you can look at abundance and you can say, okay, in a world of abundance, or with me as abundance, what's possible here for me, right? How can I live differently? How might I operate my business differently from a place of abundance? And that might be a starting point. But sometimes the abundance, we have too much programming, too much information about what abundance is and what it's not. And so you don't have access to abundance. And so you might just go down the list and look at which one of these other frequencies are speaking to me. And you might start there instead. And then in that opening through that one frequency, then you may later come back to abundance and have more access to it.
That's great.
I love that. I love that. We've talked in our trainings and such, where we're all about really definitions, and again, looking at abundance. What is abundance? It's that it's such a deeper thing than just money or cars or houses and such, and that's where we really teach everybody to focus on, find what the true definition of all the terms that you're using is, so that you understand that what you're reading in a magazine is designed just to catch your eye, just to kind of keep your attention. But it really isn't, perhaps, again, depending on the article or what you're reading, but it really isn't the true nature of abundance, or the true nature of love or joy or wonder. So what you're recommending is that people who maybe feel somewhat out of sorts, go to your website and do that evaluation. That's kind of a self-diagnosis to kind of get like, oh, this is the direction that I need to focus my attention on. Is that kind of how your test works?
Yeah. The quiz will tell you which of these archetypes are most dominant, and that's a good starting point to just start to become aware of, like, oh yeah, these are the behaviors that I'm operating by. Because sometimes you don't see it. You don't see it right away, because you're just it's just a part of you. But when you see it listed out, or and you're like, oh yeah, okay, perfectionist. I'm I want to get things right. I'm afraid of getting things wrong. I don't want to make mistakes. I keep on procrastinating because I think that I'm not going to get to a place where I feel safe to put this out in the world and receive what I want. Right. And so you keep on tweaking. Like you start to see like, oh yeah, I do this. I keep on tweaking. I keep on procrastinating. But I procrastinate because I'm trying to get to a place where I feel safe to put this out in the world. But no amount of tweaking this is going to help me feel safe. Right. And so that's like start to become aware of the habits. And as soon as you become aware of the habits, then it's all going to start to unfold for you. You're going to see where else this shows up. Right. And that's the beauty of awareness.
Don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that you said that it's not that you're bad or you're wrong, or and to remember that each of those archetypes is useful in some context. It's but by having choice over which one you jump into and operate from, I think is what we want to give people, right? And so they're not just automatically or unconsciously slipping into these behaviors that may be creating more challenges and obstacles than they need to be creating.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you learn. I mean, speaking from personal experience in my life, I know that when I was a kid, my mom used to give the silent treatment to me. Right? She'd be upset. She'd give me the silent treatment, and then that would just like kill me. Like it would just, my mom is shutting off love from me, and then I need to figure out a way to please her and make her happy so that she can, so that I can receive her love again. Right. Yeah. So even in this example, so then what I learned was I needed to please other people. I needed to make them happy. And then if I made them happy, then I would be liked. And then I would, be seen as valuable. Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as much as we say we don't want to be like our parents, naturally we do. So
slip into it. Yeah.
Right. So when I would get upset earlier on in my relationship with my wife, I would kind of sulk in the corner and kind of have like a silent treatment. And because I saw that it quote unquote worked to get attention, but it's totally manipulative. Right. It's totally messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I needed to come to terms of like, oh, what I'm doing here isn't healthy for anyone. It's not for me. It's not for my wife. It's not a good dynamic in a relationship. Right. Same for me in terms of getting upset and then like walking away instead of learning to be with the discomfort and have a conversation. That was a big thing for me because I learned to avoid conflict. Right.
A lot of us do. I think that's ingrained in a lot of us for sure. Yeah.
So a big part of this work is learning to stay with the discomfort, learning to see that even if I stay with this discomfort, that often what my mind thinks is going to be the consequence, and that's why I'm avoiding this situation, isn't actually the result.
Yeah.
There are other possibilities.
Yeah. I love that.
That's very, very powerful. I hope everybody's taking notes. So, or at least they're being able to relate to some of these things. I would definitely recommend going and taking that quiz. Might surprise you. Sometimes.
Yeah. I'll say quickly because some of these things have changed, and I might not have updated the quiz yet. But in the quiz, probably the frequencies of opening are wonder, abundance, trust, connection, and authority. So the trust and authority changed recently to ease and power. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Why did you make that change?
I started writing a book on this, and just the energetic framework for the book seemed to require a change for those. It didn't have the same fullness and energy as the other ones did.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good reason.
Yeah.
Okay, and so one of the things that that we've talked about in the past, that you are not a fan of the law of attraction. Let's chat about that a little bit. Why is that?
I'm not, yeah.
And actually, before we go there, define that for us first, so to see that you have what definition of law of attraction that you have.
Okay, so before I go there, I'm going to say that what I don't like about the law of attraction is how people like take it to fulfill their desires in a way. So maybe let's take a step back. So I used to be so much into the law of attraction, and I would coach about the law of attraction. And what I saw was that people wanted to create things so that they could feel safe or they could feel more valuable. So like they would want to create money, a lot of money, so that they can feel safer, to prevent against uncertainty. They would want to manifest their relationships so that they can feel love. Nothing really wrong with that, but it's like they came from this place of the way I saw it. And maybe this is my filter of it, because this is how I used it. Is I thought that the law of attraction was going to save me.
Okay.
And so I use the law of attraction to help me get out of feeling bad about myself or feeling fear about myself in the world, right? And I see that a lot in the way that people think about the law of attraction. Yeah.
Got it. It's like the answer for them, right? It's like,
yeah. And then it becomes this perpetual thing. I think the other thing that I find that I don't prefer about how some people talk about the law of attraction is that it's often about positivity, and the other emotions are looked down upon. And so there's a tendency to suppress them and really go toward positivity now,
and not honor them. Yeah.
And not honor them. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the law of attraction in itself, it's a law. So it's good. But what I've discovered works for me is come from a place of loving presence, knowing that the loving presence is always going to draw what I need in my life. And I can be with what is in my life with complete acceptance, with complete compassion, right? It goes back to what I was saying before about being compassionate for our humanity, right? Our humanity has fears, it has emotions, and let's welcome it all. Let's make space for it all. And because we're making space of all, we are now in that place of maybe what Abraham Hicks calls the vortex, right?
Yeah.
But we're living as the vortex, embracing it all, rather than making any part of our experience wrong.
Yeah. So it's for us, it's what we talk about is it's not a this or that mentality. It's a this and that and that, and it's all inclusive, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because if you live from a this or that mentality, right?
Yeah.
It's divine or human, then there's a separation, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when you have that
separation,
you got to pick a side, right? And so like some people live from the, like, I'm a human with a soul, right? Versus like I'm I'm everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's one of the
absolutely.
things that we put into our trainings too, is to, if you, want to practice the law of attraction such, then, you need to be the abundance, not
Hmm.
look for the abundance. It's that we find that so many people that they think that the answers are out there when they're actually in here.
Right here. All the answers
Mhm.
are right here.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
but in here is part of out there.
Hmm.
But that they have that separation, is that no,
Yeah.
it's not me, it's it's the people who are, I'm going to go shopping because it makes me feel good, and it makes you feel good for 30 minutes, maybe an hour, and such, and then that dissipates. It's just that dopamine hit that you're getting, and then they have to go out and do it again, or do something else, because it's always out there. And it's like, no, it's here, it's
Yeah.
just right here.
Yeah,
Right.
and the analogy we use, Nat, is it's the glass half full, half empty model, and it you always have some people, oh, it's half full, half empty, and we remind them, no, it's always full, just two different substances all the time. In fact, it overflows all the time,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that ties back to the frequency of opening of abundance. It's like,
yeah,
what is it like to live from a place of overflow? What is it like to give
exactly.
from overflow, right?
Yeah,
Rather than say like, oh, I only have so much and I can only give so much, or I can only receive so much. But when there's overflow,
yeah,
then it's just, it's a whole different way of being.
yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah, the
Yeah.
energetic frequency that you bring to the table is completely different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So you talk about being present. Why don't you give us a little bit more, like living from presence? What does that mean, and how is that a value in your model?
Mm, sure. Um, so I lived earlier in my life, I lived a lot of my life from my mind.
Hmm.
And I thought that, and in our society, we value being intellectual, we value knowledge and being smart. And
Yeah.
so I lived from my mind, and I thought, well, if I had enough knowledge, if I had enough smarts, if I kept track of everything well enough, then I could live a safe, enjoyable life.
Mm-hmm.
And but that mind also has I realized recently actually that the mind that's trying to keep me safe is the mind of a younger me.
Mm.
And so that mind doesn't have all the information that's available, but yet we go there to feel safe, right? Or I did, at least.
Hmm.
And so it came to a point for me where I was just so exhausted. Like, how can I continue living this way of trying to keep track of things, be hyper vigilant, trying to make sense of things, trying to live rationally, and that was so exhausting for me. And I realized I needed to live a different way. And all along, throughout my whole journey, I've been learning about energy and chi. I've done qigong, I've done yoga, tai chi, energy work, and but earlier in my life, I would be the last person to say that, yeah, I would just listen to spirit no matter what. Like that level of unknown uncertainty just scared the,
Yeah.
you know,
Because,
living daylights out of me.
part of that is because it's not a masculine thing to do, right? The masculine thing is the have things in order and do. So definitely for them, and we live in such a masculine world, instead of trusting and
Hmm.
allowing flow and tapping into that piece of it. I think in the last, I could say I'd seen in maybe the last 20 years or so, things have started to shift over to, more of a balance, and even on the feminine flow, allowing things and coming from heart and compassion. But that's not the society that we grew up in.
Absolutely. And I'm really grateful that you brought that up, Gary, because
Mhm.
um, that that was a big reason why I felt so enough as a kid.
Yeah.
Is,
Mm-hmm.
I came in being very sensitive, empathic, emotional. I cry at movies, and have
Oh my
very
gosh, Nat, you were human.
right. But I mean, I learned from what people said, like, oh, that's just a movie, you don't cry at movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so just like one of those, and you hear it enough times, you're like, oh, okay, something's wrong about me. I'm,
Exactly.
I shouldn't be like this, or I shouldn't be emotional. That's a weakness, because I can't show emotion. So I start to build up these defenses, and all of what we're talking about, the sensitivity, the emotions, are all, not all, but primarily feminine consciousness, right? A feminine awareness. And so because I'm like this, I work with a lot of clients who, one thing or another, have leaned in more into their masculine, probably over in a non-healthy masculine, and suppress their feminine, because it just wasn't safe to display that, right?
Yeah.
So definitely there's like you track that there's definitely a shift now in the global consciousness, where we're leaning into bringing more of the feminine into our lives, and even the playfulness, and wonder even is all about feminine qualities, feminine consciousness, not just feminine qualities, but more of a conscious and awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah, more of the yin into our lives, and balancing with a yang, and everyone has different harmony with that, sure.
Of course.
So
bringing that back to living from presence, then how does that resonate there?
So so I recognize that we are the presence. Like we have it. We can say that we have it, but in a sense we are it. And so there's it's one thing I read recently. It was Rhonda Byrne, who wrote the initial Secret book. She came out with the second one called The Greatest Secret. And there's one line in there that I took as value, which is the only thing that's the only thing that's of value, or the only thing that is aware, is awareness itself. Right. So when we are aware of anything, it is that awareness, it is that presence. There is no human that is actually aware. In fact, that awareness can be aware of the human, right? And the awareness can be awareness of awareness, but that's what we are, right? Yeah. And so the more that we can relax into that, right? And we can do that very easily by just starting to name things that we're aware of in this moment, right? Like, I'm aware of you, Gary, on the screen. I'm aware of you, Ross. I'm aware that I'm sitting on this chair, and I'm aware that my feet are touching the floor differently, because one is touching the floor and one is touching the leg of the table. And I'm aware of how I sound through the headphones and how I sound through the microphone. And I can also hear this distant plane sound. And suddenly, as you start to name all this, you start to notice that you calm down, things slow down, and you're even more aware of what is here. That's you, right? And so as we live from here, we also start to notice what else is here. What else is life as me, or life as awareness presenting to me? Yeah. So besides, the way that I coach is this way, where I invite my clients to come into presence, to arrive into presence. And then, instead of guiding them where I think they should go, which tends to be traditional coaching, not across the board, everyone does it differently, of course. I really listen to what's here. Maybe it's a feeling in the body, maybe it's an emotion, maybe it's a thought, and I just keep on bringing attention to what is getting my attention.
Yeah.
And that somehow creates change, because you're bringing more of yourself forward, more of who you really are, your true self, awareness, presence, whatever you want to call it, God self, right? You're bringing more of that forward and you're living from there. And then law of attraction, let's bring that back, is responding to your presence, responding to you, and you're seeing like, oh, this and this and this, and I'm going to follow this and I'm going to do this. And then you're in flow because you're paying attention to what life is wanting you to see, which is really everything in your life. Life is wanting you to see everything in your life, right? And everything in your life is a mirror of how you're being, of your beliefs and everything. So life is always showing you. It's just that when we think we're separate human beings making life happen, that we lose sight of this wisdom that's always here to guide us.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so quickly, so then tying back to those frequencies is like living from a presence of abundance. You know, it's that state of being. It's like you're going to receive new information, different information that will lead you down the path of like, how can I live a life that's more in alignment with me, with who I am, not who I think I am.
Right.
Yeah. So sorry, Gary, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no, I was just saying about the presence thing. It's, you know, like when, because I did martial arts in my younger years as well. And one of the things that we would find in some of our higher level trainings is we used the body as a tool for accessing an enlightened state. That was the purpose of the movements. It wasn't for defense. It kind of showed up as that way, but you know, at its core, if we can start to you know, fully be aware of every movement that the hand is making on its path or on its journey for a block or a punch or whatever, and you're fully aware of that, it really does stop time. And it's so wild where it's just like, it's like, wow, it's like it really shifts your perception of what you think the passage of time is when you become fully present.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a real world example of this would be like, I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was in a store with my wife, and she does her normal thing. She likes to look at everything, and you know, and my mind starts going off. My mind's like, oh, this is wasting so much time. I have so much work to do. And I started to feel uncomfortable, like I needed to get out here, and then my wife had to change her behavior so that I could feel okay, right?
Yeah.
And I started to become aware of that. I'm like, wait a second, right now, where I am, I'm actually okay. It's just my mind that's going off, creating the story.
Nice.
Right. And so I started to become aware. I started to focus on the things in front of me, the stuff on the shelves, my feet on the ground. And in no time at all, I felt centered, grounded. I was present, and my wife could continue to do what she needed to do, and I could just be present and enjoy myself. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's like, so often our minds start to spin a story that's not really about what is here in the moment, and we get caught up in that, and then we need life or other people to change so that we could feel better, when really we forgot that in the beginning we're the one that created the story, or our mind did.
Absolutely. That's great. That's awesome.
Well, that was the pretty much the fastest hour I think we've ever had.
Oh wow.
Pretty quick. Yeah.
That's amazing. You guys are really wonderful. I felt a tremendous amount of flow here with you both. So
Awesome.
really grateful to be invited to share.
So let's wrap this up by telling people where they can find you. And so we've been kind of scrolling your website at the bottom of the screen, but kind of give us just a nice recap of what you do and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ross and Gary. So people can go to boldaliveness.com currently to connect with me if they want to take the quiz to learn more about which of the survival archetypes you are. You can go to boldaliveness.com/quiz. Basically, I'm a spiritual coach, and I work with, my bio says people with big ideas, bold ideas, and big hearts. And essentially, these are visionary types, creators, people that are just, never probably fit in, have new ideas. And I really want to support them to honor who they are, to live in alignment with what they're here to bring, and to do that in a way that is energizing and nourishing for themselves. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for coming and I know it was a little bit of short notice, and you jumped on and supported us with filling the spot. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. I thought that's what happened. So
yeah.
Well, the first one that came to mind. So that worked out really, really well for us.
Thank you, guys.
And for those of you that are listening, remember that we've got Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time. We got Down the Rabbit Hole. You can come and join Ross and I for extended conversations, exploring more of this topic, as well as some of our previous chats or anything you want to talk about. It's open forum. hackingtheinfinitematrix.com/rabbit hole. You can get the Zoom link and then jump on live and have interaction with us. And that will be Saturday morning. Actually, I won't be here this Saturday because I'm actually be traveling, but Ross will be there to see you all.
Hey, Matt, if you're available, you want to join me?
You're asking me? Yeah, I'll join you.
All right,
awesome.
I'll send you all the information. So that's even a plus. So if
look at that, that's awesome.
Today's live stream, then you're gonna have join the rabbit hole, and you can.
Wait, hold on, Nam. Do you know what you've signed up for though?
Yes, I have no idea. That's the big. I'm that willing to just go with it and see.
That's awesome.
On the rabbit hole is a direct interaction with us. So everybody's on the screen. They can ask their questions.
And wherever the conversation goes, it goes.
Very,
I
very
love that.
specifics.
Yeah.
You can take me through therapy.
Oh, I don't know if you're going to get a free session here, Ross. So
happen.
There's not enough time, Ross. There's just not enough time.
He's been wanting to say that on the air for a long time.
Thanks everyone for showing up.
Thank you all.
Make sure you visit and check out Nat's stuff at boldaliveness.com and join us on Rabbit Hole. We look forward to seeing you all. Until next time, be well, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.